Good morning, students. So welcome you all to another session. So let's begin today's session. So in the previous class, we have completed with the circulatory system. So we are talking about the anatomy of the earthworm. So in continuation with that, in the previous session, we have completed with the circulatory system as well as the excretory system of the earthworm. Right. So today, let's begin with the next system what we have on the list. And the system what we'll be taking up for today is the nervous system of the earthworm. Right. So let's begin today's session by taking up with the nervous system of the earthworm. Okay, so now the nervous system of the earthworm consists of two important systems. One is the central nervous system and the other one is the peripheral nervous system, right? So there are two systems which constitute the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Both of these systems are basically involved in the process of control and coordination of this organism, right? So the only system that is involved in the process of control and coordination in this organism, that is earthworm, is this particular system, which is called as the nervous system, which would constitute two major systems. One is the central nervous system and the other one is the peripheral nervous system. Now, the central nervous system consists of two important structures. Again, one is there is something called as a nerve ring and the other one is called a double ventral nerve cord, right? So a nerve ring is being present and a double ventral nerve cord is being present. So this nerve ring and the double ventral nerve cord together constitutes the central nervous system of this organism, whereas the peripheral nervous system constitutes the nerves which arise from different structures, right? So all the nerves constitute the peripheral nervous system, as well as the nerve ring and the double ventral nerve cord constitutes the central nervous system of these organisms. So with these the nerve ring, the double ventral nerve cord, as well as the nerves, they would start bringing about the complete process of control and coordination. The complete process of control and coordination is actually brought about by these systems in this organism called as the earthworm, right? So let us quickly look at this, where exactly what are the components of the nervous system of this organism, where exactly they are present, and also along with these components, that is the central and peripheral nervous system, these organisms also have some sort of a sensory structures which are called as the sense receptors. So we'll be talking about those sensory receptors also once we have understood the nervous system of this organism. Now, to understand the nervous system of this organism, so we'll be taking up with the lateral view of the body of this organism, just like what we have seen yesterday when we were taking up with the circulatory system. So similarly, we'll be taking up with the lateral view of the body of the organism so that we are able to identify where exactly the different structures related to the nervous system of this organism is being present, right? So let us begin with the lateral view of the body of this organism. Now, so when we do the lateral structure, so this is the organism when we view it from the lateral sides, right? So this would be the organism when we start viewing it from the lateral sides, right? And here would be the first segment. We know that this segment is called the peristomium, and then we would have the other segments also. So we are drawing those particular segments. Now, to understand the location of these sensory organs, we do the outline of the alimentary canal so that we are able to correlate where exactly these structures are there, taking the reference of the alimentary canal, right? So let us quickly draw the alimentary canal. So here would be the mouth. Mouth is being present here. Now, mouth would open up into this structure, a wider structure, and this wider structure we started calling it as the buccal cavity. Now this buccal cavity opens up into this larger structure, little wider structure, which is called as the pharynx, right? And then pharynx would open up into another narrow structure which is called the esophagus, right? Esophagus opens up into another highly muscular structure which is called the gizzard, right? And then gizzard will open up into a narrow tubular structure called the stomach, and then the stomach will open up into this wider structure which is called the intestine, which would proceed till the last segment here. So this is what we have the alimentary canal of this organism here. Now if we start making the segments, we know that till the second segment we would have the buccal cavity. So the third segment and the fourth segment we would have the pharynx, right? So here also we will have just a few segments, so this would be sufficient, right? So third and fourth segment, we know that there is pharynx being present, right? Now, this is the alimentary canal. Now keeping this as a reference point, right? Let us see where exactly the structures related to the nervous system is actually being present, right? As I said, the central nervous system consists of two important structures, right? Central nervous system consists of two important structures. One is the nerve ring, right? Nerve ring. The second one is called the ventral nerve cord. Second one is the nerve cord. Now, when we talk about this nerve ring, where exactly the nerve ring is being present and how exactly the nerve ring is formed. Nerve ring is actually formed by three structures, right? Nerve ring is actually formed by three structures. So let us see what are those three structures. The first one is called as suprapharyngeal ganglia. So this is the first structure which would form the nerve ring. The second structure which would form the nerve ring is called the subpharyngeal ganglia. And the third structure which would form the nerve ring is called as circumpharyngeal connectives or commissures. So circumferential connectives. So through these three structures, this structure called as nerve ring is actually being formed. Right? So nerve ring is formed by the inclusion of three structures. Three structures. One is called as the suprapharyngeal ganglia. The second one is called the subpharyngeal ganglia, and the third one is called the circumpharyngeal connective. Now, what is the suprapharyngeal ganglia? The ganglia that is present right above the pharynx. Supra refers to above, right? So the pharynx that is present right above the pharynx region, or the ganglia that is present right above the pharynx region, we would start calling it as the suprapharyngeal ganglia. Now, here we would have the pharynx region, right? So right around the pharynx or right above the pharynx, this is the pharynx region what we have. So right above the pharynx, that means towards the dorsal side of the pharynx, right? So this is the pharynx from the lateral view. This would be the upper side, that is the dorsal side, and this would be the ventral side, the lower side, right? So right above the pharynx, especially in the third segment, there is one pair of ganglia being present, and that pair of ganglia we would start calling it as the suprapharyngeal ganglia, right? So let me start doing it here. So in the third segment, right above the pharynx, there is one pair of ganglia being present. So this is one pair of ganglia, large ganglia that is being present right above the pharynx region. So this we will start calling it as the suprapharyngeal ganglia. Now this suprapharyngeal ganglia is also called as the cerebral ganglia. Right? So either we call it as a suprapharyngeal ganglia, or we would start calling it as a cerebral ganglia, right? So this is the first part of the nerve ring. Second part of the nerve ring is called as the subpharyngeal ganglia. Now this subpharyngeal ganglia is located below the pharynx. Sub refers to below. Supra is above the pharynx. Subpharyngeal is below the pharynx. So below the pharynx, in the fourth segment, right? So let me start numbering here also. So this would be the second segment. This would be the third segment, and this would be the fourth segment, and 5, 6, and it goes on like that, right? So below the pharynx, in the fourth segment, that is in this segment, right? Below the pharynx, in the fourth segment, again, there is one pair of ganglia being present, right? So below the pharynx, in the fourth segment, there is one pair of ganglia being present, and this pair of ganglia, we will start calling it as the subpharyngeal ganglia. It is called as the subpharyngeal ganglia. So this is the second part of the nerve ring that is being present. Now, the third part of the ganglia, third part of the nerve ring. The third part of the nerve ring is called circumpharyngeal corrective. So what does that mean? Circum is surrounding it throughout the circular way. Pharyngeal connectives. So surrounding the pharynx, there is a connection that is being present, which would connect the suprapharyngeal ganglia with that of the subpharyngeal ganglia. Get it? Right? Surrounding the pharynx, right around the pharynx, there is a connective that is being present, a connection that is being present, which would start connecting the suprapharyngeal ganglia with that of the subpharyngeal ganglia. So let me start drawing that connection here. So here there would be this connection that is being present. So we are able to show only one way, only one side, right? Because the other side, the other connective will be there. right? So this we would start calling it as the circumpharyngeal connective, right? So this would be the circumpharyngeal connective, what we have called. Right, circumferential connectives. So all these three structures together, it would constitute a nerve ring. So what exactly is happening here? There is a ring-like structure which is seen surrounding the entire pharynx, which would connect the suprapharyngeal ganglia with that of the subpharyngeal ganglia. That's the reason why we would start calling it as the nerve ring. A ring of nerves is being formed. So how is this connective being formed? Connectives are nothing but they are nerves. Right? These nerves would start connecting the suprapharyngeal ganglia with that of the subpharyngeal ganglia. As a result of which, there is formation of this nerve ring happening. Right? So nerve ring is formed by three structures. One is the suprapharyngeal ganglia present above the pharynx in the in the third segment. Subpharyngeal ganglia present below the pharynx, right? That is towards the ventral side in the fourth segment. Connecting the suprapharyngeal ganglia and the subpharyngeal ganglia, there is this circumpharyngeal connectives which will start connecting both of them together, forming a structure called as the nerve ring. So these three structures together would constitute the central nervous system of the body of this organism. Right. Now, along with that, there is one more structure also, which is a part of the CNS, which is nothing but the nerve cord. Nerve cord is nothing but a rod-like structure which usually runs on the ventral side of the body, connecting the subpharyngeal ganglia. Now, connecting the subpharyngeal ganglia or arising from the subpharyngeal ganglia arises a rod-like structure which runs throughout the mid-ventral side of the body, and that structure we would start calling it as a nerve cord. So in most of the places it will be written as a double ventral nerve cord. The reason is because there are two rod-like structures, double ventral nerve cord running towards the ventral side of the body, and it is a rod-like structure, a nerve which appears to be in the form of a rod. So we would start calling it as a double ventral nerve cord. So how does that arise? So from here, starting from the subpharyngeal ganglia towards the ventral side, towards the mid-ventral side, there is this structure which actually arises. So two structures which would arise completely, it would run throughout the length of the body. So this we would start calling it as the double ventral nerve cord. Right, so this double ventral nerve cord is actually being present. Now this double ventral nerve cord, it begins from the fourth segment, starting connecting the subpharyngeal ganglia, and it would run up to the last segment. Right, so this is usually referred to as a double ventral nerve cord. So all these two structures together, we would start calling it as the central nervous system. Right, so what all does the central nervous system include now? There is something called as the suprapharyngeal ganglia, the subpharyngeal ganglia, circumpharyngeal connectives, and a double ventral nerve cord. And not only this, there is one more structure also being present. After the fourth segment, on the ventral side, on the double ventral nerve cord, after the fourth segment, that is from the fifth segment onwards, there are segmental ganglia being present. So there are ganglia which are arranged like this. So in each segment, there are these ganglia which actually arises. So in each segment, starting from the fifth segment onwards, there is a pair of segmental ganglia which actually arises. Right? In all of the segments, starting from the fifth segment onwards till the end, there are these segmental ganglia that is actually being present. Right? So all these would be the segmental ganglia which are being present. So this, let me start labeling it. So this is called as the segmental ganglia. Right. So this is how the central nervous system is actually said to be arranged in the body of this organism. Right. So what all does the central nervous system include now? The nerve ring and the nerve cord. Nerve ring has the suprapharyngeal ganglia, the subpharyngeal ganglia, the circumpharyngeal ganglia. Whereas the nerve cord arises from the subpharyngeal ganglia present towards the ventral side of the body, right? And it would extend up to the last segment, and location is, it is said to be present mid-ventral side of the body. Right. Now, on the double ventral nerve cord, in each of the segment, starting from segment number 5, there are these segmental ganglia which are being present, and these segmental ganglia also constitute the central nervous system, right? So this is what we have, the central nervous system of the body of this organism, that is the cockroach. Now, talking about peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, I told you, it would include something called as the nerves, right? So there are nerves which would arise as a part of this peripheral nervous system, right? So from where all does the nerves arise? First thing, the nerves would arise from the subpharyngeal ganglia, suprapharyngeal ganglia. So here we would have the nerves usually arising, right? So here the nerves would arise, right, from the suprapharyngeal ganglia, and from the segmental ganglia, there are these nerves actually arising, right? So these nerves are the ones which are actually involved in transmission of nerve impulse, and they are the ones which are involved in the process of conduction of impulses from one part of the body to the other part of the body, right? So these are the nerves, which is a part of the peripheral nervous system, right? So this is what we have with the system of control and coordination in this particular organism called as the earthworm. So it has the central nervous system and it has the peripheral nervous system also. Central nervous system, all of these structures we have seen, and we have understood where exactly those structures are also being present, right? And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which would include the nerves, and nerves would basically arise from the suprapharyngeal ganglia, that is nothing but the cerebral ganglia that is located on the third segment on the dorsal side of the body above the pharynx region. So from there, the nerves would arise and it would start sending the information from the, or it would undergo the process of control and coordination towards the anterior part of the body. From there on, then we would have these segmental ganglia. From the segmental ganglia, there are nerves which actually arise, and these nerves bring about the control and coordination in each of the segments. Right? So toward the last segment, the segmental ganglia are being present. Throughout the last segment, the nerves would actually arise from the segmental ganglia. Right? So this is what we have with the anatomy of the nervous system of this organism, which is called as the earthworm. Right? Now, along with this organs, these organisms also have certain sensory structures, which we start calling them as receptors. There are three major sensory structures which are actually a part of this particular organism. The first one, we would start calling them as epidermal receptors. The first type of receptors, right? We are talking about the sensory receptors. So talking about the sensory receptors, the first type of sensory receptors would be called as the epidermal receptor. So epidermal receptors, they are actually said to be tactile in function. We would actually start calling them as tango receptors, right? Tango receptors who are said to be tactile in function. That is, they are said to be sensitive to touch, right? These are nothing but touch sensitive receptors which are present on the epidermal part of the body, on the epidermis of the body. Right. So on the epidermis of the body, there are these receptors called as tango receptors or the tactile receptors which are present, whose major role is to they are actually said to be sensitive to touch sensitive receptors. So they are mostly present on the lateral side of the body and the ventral side of the body, right? So they are said to be most abundantly found on the lateral side as well as the ventral side of the body of this organism, epidermis of this organism, right? So this is the first receptor that are present. Second receptors that are present are called as the buccal receptors. The second one is called the buccal receptors. So these buccal receptors, from the name itself we can make out, they are actually located in the buccal cavity. Now these buccal receptors, they are said to be chemoreceptors, right? They are said to be chemoreceptors. Now what does that mean, chemoreceptors? They are sensitive to chemical signals, right? Since they are present in the buccal cavity, they are said to be sensitive to chemical signals, right? So they are able to identify different tastes because of the chemical receptors or the chemoreceptors that are present in the buccal cavity, right? So this is the second type of sensory receptors that are present in this organism. The third type of sensory receptors present in this organism are called as photoreceptors. They are called as photoreceptors. These photoreceptors, from the name itself, we can make out what does they include. They are nothing but light detecting receptors, right? So they are the ones which will actually detect the intensity of light. right? So they are again present in the epidermis of the skin of this organism, and where exactly they are mostly present on the dorsal side of the body of this organism, and they are most abundantly found in two regions. One is called the peristomium, and the other one is called the prostomium. You know what is peristomium and prostomium, right? Peristomium, the first part or the first segment of the body of this organism is peristomium. A slight extension from the peristomium, we would start calling it as the prostomium. So these photoreceptors, they are said to be more abundant on the epidermis of the dorsal side of the body of this organism, and they are said to be most abundant in the peristomium as well as the prostomium of this organ. So they are responsible for detecting the intensity of the light. So epidermal receptors, they are responsible for detecting touch, right? They are said to have a touch sensitive receptor, the tactile receptors or the tango receptors, buccal receptors. They are said to detect the different chemical signals. So therefore we start calling them as chemoreceptors. And then we have the photoreceptors, which are responsible for detecting the intensity of light. Location wise, most abundant present in the most abundantly found on the lateral and the ventral side of the skin of this organism. Buccal receptors present in the buccal cavity and lining cells lining the buccal cavity. And then we have the photoreceptors, most abundantly found in the prostomium and peristomium on the dorsal surface of the epidermis. Right? So these are the sensory structures that are present in the body of this organism. So along with all of these organs, they also have these sensory structures, which are actually a part of the system of control and coordination in this particular organism called as the earth. Right? So with this, we are done with the system for control and coordination, which is nothing but the nervous system. Right? So now let's take up with the next system what we have in the list. And the next system what we have in the list is called the reproductive system. So moving on to the last system with regards to the organism called as the earthworm. So talking about the reproductive system of this organism. So let's take up a few things with regards to the anatomy of the reproductive system in this organism. Now, talking about the reproductive system, these organisms, they are all said to be monoecious organisms, right? Earthworms are said to be monoecious. So we know what exactly monoecious is all about. These organisms, they are said to be bisexual organisms in common terms if we have to talk about. Or these organisms, they are also referred to as the hermaphrodites. They are called as hermaphrodites. So what are hermaphrodites? Hermaphrodites are nothing but monoecious organisms, or we would also start calling them as bisexual organisms. Now what does this mean? Hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite organism, we said that it is a bisexual organism. So we know what exactly bisexual organisms is all about. So they have both the male reproductive organs as well as the female reproductive organs within the same organism. So here also, even in case of earthworms also have both the male reproductive organs as well as the female reproductive organs within the same animal. Right? So that is, we know that the primary male reproductive organ is nothing but testis. The primary female reproductive organ is nothing but the ovary. Right? So both the testis and the ovary are actually present in the same organism. So that's the reason why we would actually start calling them as hermaphrodites. Right? So hermaphrodites are the ones which would possess both the male as well as the female reproductive organs within the same organism. So we would actually start calling them as hermaphrodites. Right? Now we know that the male reproductive organs are nothing but testis, whereas the female reproductive organs are nothing but the ovaries. Right? So let us take up with the both the testis as well as the ovaries, or the rather than that, the male as well as the female reproductive system separately. Even though they are said to be a bisexual organism, let us take up that separately. But before that, even though these organisms are said to be hermaphrodites, right? One important thing is cross fertilization is actually favored in this organism, right? Things what you need to remember. Even though they are hermaphrodites, even though both the male and female sex organs are present within the same animal, but still, even then, there is cross fertilization happening. That is, fertilization between two different organisms usually happen. The reason for that is these organisms, that is earthworms, they are actually said to be protanders. That is nothing but the male reproductive organs usually mature first, and then the female reproductive organs mature. So there is variation in the timing of maturation of both the male as well as the female reproductive organ. For that, there is cross-fertilization actually favored in this particular organism, right? So let us first begin with the male reproductive system. So once we have understood the anatomy of the male reproductive system, then we'll get into the female reproductive system. So let's take up, or let's begin first with the male reproductive system. the male reproductive system. Now talking about the male reproductive system, we know that the primary sex organs in case of males is nothing but testes. So male frogs, or sorry, not frogs, earthworms. Earthworms have two pairs of testes, right? They have two pairs of testes, right? So one pair of testes is located in the 10th segment and one in the 11th segment, right? So one pair in the 10th segment and one pair is located in the 11th segment. So the primary sex organs in case of males, in case of earthworms, in case of earthworms is the testis, where there are two pairs of testes located, one pair in the 10th segment and one pair in the 11th segment. So let us start simultaneously, let us start taking up with the structure also and see where exactly they are present. So here we are not going to do the first segment. So we are beginning with the 10th segment because we know that from the 10th segment we have the testes being present. So we are not going to do all of the segments here. We'll begin with whatever is required, that alone will start taking, right? So here I'm just drawing this structure here. Okay, so let us consider this to be the 9th segment, and here we have the 10th segment. So this would be the 10th segment, the 11th segment, and so on. So this would be fine, right? Later on we'll take up with the other segments, right? So 10th and the 11th segment. So I told you two pairs of testes, one in the 10th segment and one is present in the 11th segment, right? So let us take up with that. So in the 10th segment, the testis is usually attached to the stalk, right? The testis is actually said to be attached to the stalk. In the 10th segment, it is actually said to be the testis that is present in the 10th segment is actually attached to the intersegmental septa of 9 by 10 with the help of a stalk-like structure. So here we would have this small stalk which actually arises, right? So from this stalk, there would be these testes which would actually appear like this. So here also there would be a small stalk, and then to the stalk we have the testis being attached. So this is the testis located in the 10th segment, right? And here the same thing, even in the 11th segment also, we have a small stalk. So to that stalk, the testis is being attached. So here also, a stalk, to this stalk, the testis is actually said to be attached. So this would actually be the testis located in segment number 10 and segment number 11, right? So one in segment number 10 and one in segment number 11. This is what we have. Now, these testes, they are actually embedded in a sac-like structure, which is called as the testicular sac. So each testis is embedded in a sac-like structure called the testicular sac. So let me start drawing that sac also. So this is a sac, and this also is a sac. So here they are all said to be embedded in a sac-like structure, which we start calling it as the testicular sac. Right, so this is what is present. Each testis embedded in a sac-like structure, which is usually referred to as the testicular sac. This is what we have. Now, right below the testis, there are certain specialized glands which are being present, which we start calling them as seminal vesicles. So the next structure what we'll be taking up here is the seminal vesicles. So these organisms have two pairs of seminal vesicles, right? So they have two pairs of seminal vesicles. Now these seminal vesicles, they are present in the 11th and the 12th segments, right? Seminal vesicle is present in the 11th and the 12th segment. Things what you need to remember here. This testis of segment number 10 will have its seminal vesicle in segment number 11. Okay? Try to understand this carefully. The testis of segment number 10 will have its seminal vesicle in segment number 11. Similarly, the testis of segment number 11 will have their seminal vesicles in segment number 12. Right? So let me start doing that. So we have the testis of segment number 10. So the testis of segment number 10 will have their seminal vesicle in segment number 11. Same thing here also. So they would have their seminal vesicles in segment number 11. Whereas the testis for segment number 11 will have their seminal vesicles in the next segment. So let me draw this segment also here. So this would be the 12th segment, right? So they would have their seminal vesicles here. So these are the seminal vesicles. Right? These are the seminal vesicles. Clear? So the testis for segment number 10 will have the seminal vesicles in segment number. Let me show this also. Will have their testis in segment number 11, whereas the testis of segment number 11 will have their seminal vesicles in segment number 12. This is how it is happening. Now, what is the role of seminal vesicles? Seminal vesicles is the place where there is maturation of sperms actually happening. We know sperms are actually formed from the testis. So those sperms which are formed in the testis or synthesized in the testis, from the testis they would move into the seminal vesicles for their maturation. Right? So they would move into the seminal vesicles for their maturation. So let me do slightly differently here. So let me just put it towards the other side so that we understand the next structures also. So I'm just putting this seminal vesicle towards this side. Right? So here would be the seminal vesicles being present. Now again, if you look at the structure of it, we can just identify that the seminal vesicles present in the 11th segment are smaller compared to the seminal vesicles that are present in the 12th segment. The reason is again because in the 11th segment, testicular sacs are present, as a result of which the seminal vesicle is said to be smaller, while in case of the 12th segment, it is said to be a larger structure. Right? So I was just telling that seminal vesicles are the structures where there is maturation of the sperms actually happen. So once the sperms are formed in the testis, so those sperms from the testis will now enter into the seminal vesicles where they would undergo the process of maturation. So let us see how exactly they are coming. So before that, the testes have these funnel-like structures being present. So each testis is provided by these funnel-like structure, which we actually call it as the testicular funnel. So these testicular funnels are actually surrounded by the ciliated epithelial tissue. So there are these ciliated epithelia that is actually present before. Right. Now here also there would be these funnel-like structures which would arise. Right. So these funnel-like structures are the ones which would actually start collecting the sperms because of the presence of ciliated epithelial tissue what they have. Right. So this we would start calling them as testicular funnels. So I'll just write it down here. We would call them as testicular funnels. Right? Testicular funnels are there. As and when the sperms are being formed, the testicular funnels will start collecting the sperms from the testis, and it would start conducting those sperms, right? It would start conducting those sperms to the seminal vesicle. Right? It would start conducting those sperms to the seminal vesicle. So this is how it would actually start conducting the sperms. Yeah. So what exactly is happening here? As and when, I'm just showing one here. So let me draw one more also. So from here, the sperms are actually taken into the seminal vesicle where they would actually undergo the process of maturation. After they undergo the process of maturation, they are transported through these particular ducts which are present, and these ducts we would start calling them as the vas differential. Okay, so this is how they are actually said to be transported. So okay, what exactly is happening? So like this, we have two more coming into this seminal vesicle, and two more vas differential is actually seated. So what exactly is happening? The seminal vesicles is the one which is responsible for maturation of sperms. What exactly is happening is, as and when the sperms are being formed by the testis, those formed sperms are actually collected by the testicular funnels. Once the testicular funnels collect those sperms from the testicular funnels are now sent into the seminal vesicles, where in the seminal vesicles they would start undergoing the process of maturation. Once they undergo the process of maturation, they now are passed on into these tubular structure which are called as the vas deferens. Right? We will start calling it as vas deferens. Now these vas deferens are the ones which are responsible for the conduction of the mature sperms to the later organs. Right? So we'll just stop here. and then we'll continue with the later segments, right? So we'll continue with the 16th segment onwards, and then we'll see other structures which are being present. Let us say this is segment number 15, and here we would have segment number 16. This would be 17, 18, and then 19, and one more segment left now. So there are another specialized structures which are being present here, 20, and this will be 21. Okay, so keeping that aside for a few minutes, right? There is one more gland which is actually a part of the male reproductive system, which would arise from the 16th segment up to the 20th segment. So this is a large gland that is being present, and that gland is called as the prostate gland. So there is one pair of prostate gland which would arise from the 16th to the 20th segment. One large gland that is being present, usually arising from the 16th to the 20th segment. In some places, it will also be written as 17 to 21. We can take it either way, either 16 to 20 or 17 to 21. So let us start drawing that particular gland. So from 16 to 20, we are taking up. So here, there would be these glands which are present, right? Large glands which are present here. So 16 to 20th segment. Right, so these are the large glands that are present, and these glands we will start calling them as the prostate gland, which usually arises from the 16th to the 20th segment, or from 17th to the 21st segment. One pair present towards the lateral sides of the body, right? Present towards the lateral sides of the body. Now, these prostate glands, they would open up into the 18th segment through a pore, right? So they would actually open up into this 18th segment through a pore here, like this. Right? They would open up into the 18th segment. Now, before they open into the 18th segment, right? Before they open into the 18th segment, what exactly is happening is we have one more structure which will actually come and open up into this gland, the gland of the prostate gland. That is nothing but the vas deferens. So this vas deferens comes here into the 18th segment, and it would actually open up into the prostate gland. Like this. So it would actually open up into the prostate gland. So similarly here also, we would have this particular structure, the vas deferens, coming in and opening up into the prostate gland. Right, so they would come and they would open up into the prostate gland like this. So this is how it is actually opening. So we have two more vas deferens also coming up from these two testes. So we are not showing that because everything if you start showing it will be mess here. So that's the reason why I'm not showing it, right? So you can just understand it. You can just take it into consideration, right? So the vas deferens which arises or which brings the mature sperms will now start opening up into the ducts of the prostate gland. So prostate gland will start pouring out its secretion, and at the same time the sperms, the mature sperms, will be mixed with the secretions of the prostate gland, and they will be sent out of the body through the pores that are present on the 18th segment. And these pores are nothing but the male genital pores. We will start calling it as the male genital pores. Remember, when we were talking about morphology of this worm, we made a mention of it, right? Towards the ventral side of the body, right? On the 18th segment, I told you that there are two pores being present. Remember, this is the structure what we made. Say if this is the segments here, say this is the 17, 18, 19. Let me draw one more also. 19, and this would be the 20th segment, right? I told you on the ventral side of the body of this organism, there is one pair of structures which are being present, one pair of openings, right? And those pairs are nothing but the male genital pores, what we saw, right? So how exactly is the male genital pores formed? It is formed through the two ducts. One is vas deferens and the other one is the duct of the prostate gland. Both of them would combine together to form a common duct, and through that common duct would open to the outside through this particular pore, which is called as the male genital pore. One pair of male genital pore present on the ventral side of the 18th segment. Okay. Now, along with that, if you remember when we were talking about morphology, I told you that there are two more structures also being present, paired structures being present. One present on the 17th segment, right? One is present on the 17th segment, and one in the 19th segment. Remember those, right? So one in the 17th segment and one in the 19th segment. So let me just put it here. So one in the 17th segment, and one would be in the 19th segment. And these structures and these glands are nothing but, we will start calling them as the accessory glands. They are called as accessory glands. And these accessory glands have numerous secretion, numerous ducts which would arise, right? And all of those ducts opens up into something called as the copulatory papillae, right? So I told you that these structures which are present towards the outer side, we started calling them as the copulatory papillae. So I told you, right, these copulatory papillae are actually responsible for the process of, or they play a very important role during the process of mating or during the process of copulation. I told you that they would start secreting certain chemical substances, right? The chemical substances which are secreted by the accessory glands will be released into the copulatory papillae, as a result of which those chemical substances will become somewhat hardened, and that hardened substance will start holding the two organisms together during the process of copulation or during the process of mating. That's the reason why we started calling them as the copulatory papillae. Right? So this is what we have with the male reproductive system in case of the earthworms. So talking about male reproductive system, what all are now present there? Males reproduct or male worms or the male reproductive organs in case of earthworm has two pairs of testes, one in the 10th segment and one in the 11th segment. And this testis is located in a sac-like structure which is called as the testicular sac. And right below the testis, there is this funnel-like structure being present, which we actually start calling it as the testicular funnels. Right? So those testicular funnels are the ones which would start collecting the sperms from the testis as and when they are actually being formed. So once the testicular funnels would collect the sperms, what is it doing now? Those sperms are now being transferred to the next structure which is called the seminal vesicles. So seminal vesicles are also said to be two pairs, one pair located in the 11th segment and one pair in the 12th segment. So as I've already mentioned, the testis of segment number 10 will have their seminal vesicle in segment number 11. The testis of segment number 11 will have their seminal vesicles in segment number 12. So whatever sperms are being formed by the testis, those sperms are taken up by are picked up by the testicular funnels, and they would start transporting those sperms into the seminal vesicles. In the seminal vesicles, there is maturation of sperms happening. After the sperms undergo maturation, those sperms are now transferred into the vas deferens, the tubular structure called as vas deferens. So there are two pairs of vas deferens arising. So here we are just showing only one pair, right? There are two pairs of vas deferens which usually arise, right? Next one. From segment number 16 to 20, there are two large glands which are being present, which are usually referred to as the prostate gland. Right. So this prostate gland opens to the outside in the 18th segment through a pair of male genital pores. So before the prostate gland or the prostate duct opens to the outside through the male genital pore, there is this vas deferens which comes in, and it would combine or it would join this particular prostate duct, forming a common duct. Right? Common duct. Common duct for what? Common duct for the sperms as well as the prostate secretions. Right. Together, they would open up into this male genital pore, which is located in segment number 18. Right? A pair of male genital pore located in segment number 18. Right? Now, in segment number 17 and 19, there are two additional structures which are being present, which we start calling them as accessory glands. So these accessory glands have several tubules, which are called several ducts. Accessory ducts are being present. All of them would open up through this copulatory papillae, which is located in segment number 17 and segment number 19. So this, through the secretions of the accessory glands, which would be poured into the copulatory papillae, those secretions will start becoming hardened. As a result of which, with the help of those secretions and the copulatory papillae, two worms are actually held together throughout the process of copulation or throughout the process of mating. Right? So this is what we have with the anatomy of the male reproductive system. Right? So the next session, let us take up with the anatomy of the female reproductive system, and then we'll take up with the process of copulation, fertilization, as well as the process of development. Right? Thank you.